We're talking to my bro, Mr. Paul Osincup, and he can help you rewire your brain to use humor to ultimately decrease stress, enhance well-being and resilience, and then boost productivity and work performance. We're going to be diving into this episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast.
Do you want blissful balance in your personal and professional life? Great. What's up, guys? My name is Kerry Jack, and I want to help you happy hustle a life you love, one full of passion, purpose, and positive impact. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, a professional model / actor, a digital marketing specialist, a podcast host, author, a biohacker, an eco-warrior, a martial artist, a hippie cowboy, and a humanitarian. My goal is to educate, inspire, and entertain you to live a life of passion, purpose, and positive impact. It is time to happy hustle your dream reality.
Yee-yee. All right, what is up, my man, Mr. Paul Osincup? Welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast, brother. I'm super stoked to rock the mic with you.
Happy to be here, man.
Let's go.
Let's
All right,
do
man.
it.
Paul, you are a corporate trainer, you're a humor strategist, and the best-selling author of your new book, The Humor Habit: How to Rewire Your Brain to Stress Less, Laugh More, and Achieve More. And Paul's global mission for workplace happiness has provided him the opportunity to work with hundreds of organizations, including Harvard Kennedy School of Leadership, Google, Discover, and the U.S. Air Force. You have a lot going on, man, but specifically, I want to talk today about how we can decrease the stress in our lives and also increase the well-being and resilience. In addition, boost productivity and work performance. A lot to cover here, but before we get into all that good stuff, Paul, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
All right. You may know this already, but not a lot of people know. I had my ribs cracked in a weird way when I was a kid. My mom took me and my sisters on a trip in Colorado, and there were these deer. And my mother of the year mom was like, "Hey kids, you should go out and pet that wild animal out there." And so me and my sisters go out, and I'm petting this deer on the head, and it just hauls off and punches me in the ribs with its front hoof, like, and then it didn't even run away. Like, it was just like, "I'm here all day, bro," you know? And my sister's laughing. I'm hunched over. It cracked my ribs. So yeah, I had my ribs cracked by a deer hoof.
Yeah, that's intense. I know moose will charge people and that they're part of the deer family. My brother has fed a deer a Pabst Blue Ribbon before by the river, and he got these pictures with this deer. It was a buck, and he had just a beer, and he was just like sharing it with this, and he sent them to Pabst Blue Ribbon, and they sent him so much free swag and beer.
Oh, really? That's
It
awesome,
was
man.
epic. But I haven't
Hey,
heard anyone getting punched per se. So there you go.
maybe that's what why the deer did that. You know, like, I walked up and he's like, "Go get me a beer, bitch."
Yeah, probably. That's if you had a PBR when you were 9, it would have probably went better for you. But
Yeah.
anyway, man, speaking of going better for everyone, you like that segue? Let's
Good
talk
segue.
about how do we decrease the stress in our lives and increase the well-being, specifically through your book, The Humor Habit. I always like to kick things off with, why did you write this book, Paul?
Yeah, well, you know, as someone who's been speaking about the application of applied humor for over a decade, you know, when I get done speaking at these events, it just got embarrassing having to sign other people's books. So I thought I better have my own.
Yeah.
But no, for real. I mean, I've been researching humor for a long time and speaking on it. And what I've found is that it's an underutilized well-being strategy, even strategy in the workplace to enhance morale, bring teams together, communicate, influence. And so I've learned a lot over the years. And I want to share that with people because there's a lot written about why humor is helpful to us and decreases our stress. And there's a lot of advice given about, oh, you just need to laugh things off or have a sense of humor about life. But there's not really much written about, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I enhance my sense of humor? When am I supposed to laugh things off? You know, like when I
mm,
lock the keys of my rental car in the trunk before I'm frantically trying to get it back to the airport, like, oh, I'm silly. No, man, I'm pissed. I'm freaking out. You know, I'm about to
mm,
go
mm,
ballistic. So it's like there are strategies of how to increase our capacity to just take life as it comes
mm,
and, you know, find the absurdity in things. And I wanted to share that with people.
mm. Yeah, man. I think that is such an important skill to share, especially now. Like, I don't know about you, but it feels like the world is skewed more pessimistic than optimistic, right?
For sure.
And it just doesn't feel like this woke culture allows humor and comedy as it once did. I don't know if you saw that Tom Brady roast, but they were going
Yeah.
in on him, and it was like really good to see, comedy at its core, just like not holding back anymore. What's
Yeah.
your
Well,
take?
I mean,
Yeah,
I think in terms of what's important, I think is whatever makes you laugh. I mean,
yeah,
if you're going to use humor as a well-being strategy, then make it humor that's good for you, you know,
mm,
that makes you laugh. And everybody's got, you know, a different flavor for that. But you're right. And I think part of the issue with when you talk about the world is so much more negative. I mean, life is hard and cruel and sad, but it's also fun and funny and absurd and amusing.
mm,
And so it's like, what do you want to choose to look for
mm,
day to day? And you know, that's a priming effect. Like when you go to buy a new car, right? And you start to research these Jeeps that you know, I'm going to get this Jeep. And now everywhere you go, what are you seeing? You're
yeah.
seeing that Jeep everywhere, right? It's the same thing with humor. Now it's just instead of Jeeps, it's jokes. Like the whole world starts to become funny to you because you're keying in on that. And there are
Mm.
ways to do that.
And is that part of the reticular activating system, that in which I know Ed Milet talks about it, when you see a Jeep, for example, and then you see more of them, it's because your brain is now consciously aware through that RAS. Is that something, I don't know if you go down the nerdery and the science in the brain, but is that why we now pay more attention to jokes per se, because we are aware of them?
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you. Are you going down the nerdery of humor? Yeah, absolutely. I'm a
I'd like to.
self-proclaimed humor nerd. But it is because the neuroplasticity of our brains, um, you know, when we can train those, the way I think about it in our brain, you've got those neural pathways, right? Like when
Mm,
you're learning a new skill, a foreign language or a musical instrument or something. Those neural pathways are really rough at first. It's like a dirt road, you know, it's just kind of bumpy. It takes a while. It's clumsy. The more you do something, that gets paved. It gets a little smoother and quicker until eventually, when you get really good at something, it's like an information superhighway. Those are happening. You're not even thinking about it.
mm.
And humor's the same way. There's I mean, if you really want to get nerdy about it, I'll talk nerdy to you all
Do
night,
it.
baby.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but uh, there's at USC, there's a study of brain scans of people who were trying to come up with clever captions to cartoons, like funny captions to cartoons. And they had humor novices, just your average, ordinary, everyday person. They had humor amateurs who were kind of amateur comics, people dabbling in comedy. And then they had professionals, um, people who were quite famous, very good, been doing comedy for a long time. The further along on that spectrum you are, the more you start shifting from your brain's prefrontal cortex of like planning and agenda making and list making. I got to do this and this and this today.
Mm,
Getting out of that area and into the parts of the brain that are more responsible for connections, emotions, that kind of stuff. And
mm,
so there is something about being able to play with humor a little bit, practice it, and you get better and better at it. It gets easier and easier.
mm. Hence the humor habit, right? Practicing and really creating it like a muscle.
Yeah.
where you really train it. What's like the first step for someone out there who's like, all right, Paul, this sounds great, but like I want to actually, utilize humor for my business. I want to, increase my overall well-being. I want to, just like have a lighter existence,
Yeah.
leveraging, the fun nature of life. What's the first step?
Yeah. It's a good question, because the way I organize the book too is like easiest low hanging fruit to more advanced and more difficult.
Mm,
And so the easiest first step is like immersion, like a foreign language, is just immersing yourself in more humor.
mm,
So that could be, taking a half an hour this weekend to just funny up your feeds on social media. Like if everything you're following is like news and you're a big shoe addict and it's all shoes and news, like that's all you're getting constantly, right? Probably some news about shoes, which nobody needs that.
uh-uh.
So you're in control. Our social media, it's just mirroring back to us what we're doing. So you know going in, and if you like certain comedians, talk shows, whatever that make you laugh, like those, get that in your feed. The other thing I encourage is something I call having a humor homie. So you could do this as like a 1 week or a 1 month just challenge of like you and a friend say, all right, this next week, we're just each going to send each other something funny with no obligation to respond, right? Like it doesn't, because I think that's where it gets annoying, is when someone's sending you something and you get it at a time where you're like, I don't really have the time to watch this, and go, oh, LOL, huh, that's great. But it's just, we're going to just do this. We're going to send it to each other for this week or this month. Because then you're building up a collection of funny shit,
Mm-hmm.
to that you've got to as a go-to to then watch or listen to or whatever later on down the road.
Mm.
And then another kind of way of immersing yourself is whatever your screen time habits are. Uh, Making this is something I call a comedy chaser. Like, taking a chaser after you have a shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Comedy chaser is like whatever your last bit of screen time is at night, whether you're watching the news or people who are into all those true crime, like murder mystery shit, make the last bit of screen time for your day funny. Just clean the palette with a few funny reels or TikToks or whatever, a few minutes. Because what you're doing then is you're replacing stress-inducing hormones with stress-reducing hormones. Because when we laugh or find something funny, our brain gets flooded with a dose of happiness chemicals that make us feel better.
Mm. Dude, those are great tips. I mean, obviously, funny up your feed, and have a comedy chaser. Those are great tactics. I gotta mention the humor homie, or
Yeah.
that dude, that is so on point, because I have my brother and my friend. I have like 4 or 5 humor homies that like we totally get each other's humor. And I just sent one yesterday. It was, dude, I gotta mention it. It's not PC, but it's this big, chunky, redheaded woman with a rebel flag bandana bikini on, and she has a tattoo on her belly that says Boner Garage with 2
Oh,
arrows pointing
oh
down.
my God.
And
Oh
I
my.
sent it to my buddy Sean. I go, is this Gingy, aka his mom's nickname? I call her Gingy.
Oh
And
my
so he
God.
goes, dude, that is so not cool. You crossed the line.
That's your best friend or your brother?
No, it's one of my best buds.
One of your best friends. Oh my
Yeah.
God. But that's a good example of like, you guys know what makes each other laugh,
Oh yeah.
and you guys have like a bunch of trust built up. You're not going to
Yeah.
send that to like your work colleague or whatever, but
No.
if it makes him crack up, dude, and
Oh,
that's, oh my God, that's funny.
yeah, it
Um,
was too good.
but
Anyway.
and for people who are like, you know, well, a humor homie sounds great, but I don't have friends. Hey, there are ways to get around that. So like even on social media, um, just creating playlists and folders for yourself, you know, like on Instagram, you can do your favorites and save different folders. So it could just be all
Yeah.
comedy clips or whatever. So whether it's you're doing the humor homie thing or social media, you just creating a storage, your own garage,
Yes.
for humor, that people can kind of or that you can access when you need it, like
Mm.
when you're feeling shitty.
Yeah. I mean, I got to say, and I know you do improv. Fun fact for everyone who doesn't know, Paul and I have pooped in the woods together. Specifically, we've camped out on the Montana Mastermind, and
That's right. It
although
was a
we didn't
blast.
share, the time pooping together, we did share a hole, and and it was magical. And so we have that bond, but we also have a bond in terms of improv comedy because I trained at the Second City in Chicago for 3.5 years, going through their whole A through E program, and Paul is still doing improv, and I've watched him perform. Shout out to the Whiz Bang, is that correct? The Whiz
Whiz
Bang.
bang at Last Best Comedy in Bozeman.
Yeah, baby. So we're both out of Bozeman, and we should have probably just done this in person, to be honest. But nonetheless, I digress. The thing that I attribute much of my quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, success to, is improv training. And that is the art of being able to roll with the punches, yes, and things in life, overcome adversity with a smile. Like, that's
Yeah,
even the Happy Hustle logo is a little red eye guy getting socked in the eye. I made that when I was in Bali, getting socked in the eye, basically. And I was like, you know what? I can smile and persevere past adversity. It doesn't matter what happens. And
I
so that's
love it.
much in our Happy Hustle ethos. And I want to kind of ask the question of, like, improv training for everyday life. Like, what are some things that people can do to overall enhance their wit and their overall well-being in the process?
Yeah. One of my favorite, I mean, you captured one, which is kind of having a yes and attitude.
Mm,
And there's a lot written about that. I mean, that's probably, if you ask someone who doesn't know much about improv, that's probably one of the things they'll go to, is like, yes and, rather than just denying everything, take life as it comes. One of the other, building off of that, in improv, there are no mistakes, only gifts.
mm,
And so, one of the examples, I like to use is like, if I'm starting an improv scene and I walk on stage and I trip walking up on stage, I can't, in the middle of the scene be like, oh, oops, let me do that again, or oh my gosh, and freak out. That just has to become part of the scene.
mm,
That is now a gift that, and then my improv partner will probably just yes and what I just did, and see that gift of me tripping and go, Carl, you're the clumsiest surgeon I've ever worked with. Now they've gifted that right back to me of, oh, great. Now I have a character that's a clumsy surgeon. That's pretty fun to play with, and go from there. And so, like, in real life, if we were to look at, okay, there are no mistakes, only gifts. Well,
mm,
what does that look like? I interviewed, there's a viral meme of these parents who they found this drawing in marker, permanent marker, of a house on their wall, at about 2.5 feet high. And they're like, oh my gosh, of course, their kid took these markers to the wall. And so what they did was they framed it, they put a frame around it on the wall, and then put a
mm.
little placard up like it was in an art gallery.
Nice.
And they took a picture of it, and Eric Massacati is Dr. Massacati lives in Toronto. His wife took a picture of it and tweeted it from his Twitter, and it blew up. I mean, just went viral. It's been all over the news. People really relating to that. Like, what a great way of not freaking out on your kid, and having a little light with it. So rather than a mistake, they kind of used it as a gift, like, whatever. Other mistakes that have been gifts, are like, for example, um, there was a clay-like substance that they used to use to clean walls with in houses back in the 50s. But with the advent of cleaner energy and people not using coal as much, they were going out of business. Like it wasn't. So their mistake was not being on the forefront of the next, energy revolution. But one of the sisters of the founder of this product, it was a non-toxic product. She let her kids play with it, and they had a great time with it. Renamed it Play-Doh, and now it's in the Toy Hall of Fame. So you just never know.
Dang. Yeah, I mean, it is all about just going with the flow. And, I talk about actually in my book, shameless plug, the Happy Hustle version 2.0, we give the example of like swimming upstream against the river of life versus flowing with the seasonality. And I
I
just
love
feel
that.
like that's what happens oftentimes when we're just so, like strong-willed on this is how it should be, or this is my routine or my itinerary. And if I divert, something happens unexpectedly, like this morning where my power was out and I had to run to the freaking co-working space to do this podcast. It's like you got to
We're
go
on,
with
we're
the
on our
flow.
second streaming platform because the first one wasn't working. Like, yeah.
Exactly, dude. We went with the flow like 4 times. But the point is, I think it's such an important message. I want to keep going with the book and like specifically some of those tangible tactics. When we talk about like overall boosting productivity and work performance, how do you leverage humor to do so?
Yeah. So I think on an individual level, there's, kind of the next step. So let's say now I'm just consuming more humor. I've got some stuff saved or whatever. There's little things like, for example, people who take a break at work, like when you're talking about white knuckling it and swimming upstream,
Hmm.
I get in that mode sometimes of like, hey, I only got so much time today. I got to grind and grind and grind and grind. But I know that that's not how productivity works. I know that I get diminishing returns the longer I go without taking care of myself or even taking a break. So people who take a break at work are more productive, a 15-minute break, more productive when they come back. People who took a 15-minute break and watched funny videos that made them laugh during that 15 minutes were twice as productive at their next task when coming back as people who took a break with no humor. So
Interesting.
little things like that, and choosing to do that rather than saying going and bitching with your colleagues at the water cooler about what's coming down the pipe next.
Yeah.
That's a choice you could make to kind of unplug and take care of yourself. Another example, just to start training your brain and rewiring your brain to take things a little lighter and go with the flow. This is something any of the listeners could do right now. So a 1-week trial. For the next 7 days, just write down 3 things you found funny or amusing for the next 7 days. People who did this just for a week increased their overall happiness and decreased depressive symptoms for up to 6 months.
Wow.
Just by doing that for a week. And plus what that's doing is training your brain to start to see the humorous side of life more. Because what'll happen while you're doing that is like during that week, something will happen that normally would piss you off or annoy you. And you'll kind of roll your eyes and go, I'll be writing this down later.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Apologies for interrupting your programming. But I have to tell you, the best investment you can make in yourself is one in which helps you acquire skills. You've probably heard people talk about, oh, just invest in yourself and you'll be successful. Yes, that's true to a degree, but you have to invest in skills that will ultimately help you achieve your desired results. And I think one of the best skills one can possess, be it an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, is the sales sword. Really knowing how to sell, utilizing pressure-free persuasion, which will make you more money and more impact. Now, if you want to know how to sell more efficiently and effectively, I just launched a sales course called The Proven Roadmap Process to Selling Millions of Dollars and helping you to increase your conversions guaranteed. And you can get access to this new sales course that The Happy Hustle is launching at thehappyhustle.com/sales. And if you act fast, you'll get it at the lowest price it'll ever be available, because we are launching it and we want to gain amazing testimonials and social proof to further share this knowledge. So if you act fast, you can get it at the lowest price it'll ever be. That's at thehappyhustle.com/sales. Now let's get back to this episode.
And that's when, you know, your brain's starting to make the connection that, like, hey, don't freak out too much. There might even be humor in this before you're actively knowing that it's funny.
I really appreciate the writing down things that you think are funny. I actually have a whole note in my phone of potential sketches and skits, and like whenever I see a funny situation, you know, I also do that for podcast interviews where I'm like, oh, I heard something that's like, I know I could riff on, I know I could create my own version, or I know that was powerful for me, I want to talk about it. Like, this is something, the art of just writing things down that appeal to you. And
yes,
I think humor is definitely a great one. I'm definitely going to do this trial and write down, things that are funny.
Well, the positive psychology research tells us that
yeah,
by doing that, you're savoring it in the moment. You're not just letting that moment pass you by. You're savoring it, which boosts well-being overall generally. And I'll tell you, like, even as somebody who, I mean, I perform comedy, I talk about humor for a living, I get caught up in taking life and myself way too serious, you know, and I'm a high achiever. I like to do a great job. And I remember when I was first starting out doing what I do now, I had the opportunity to go speak at this massive conference in Boston, and there were going to be all these executives there. And so I was like dialed in. I printed new business cards I had in my breast pocket, you know, and everyone I saw was like getting a business, like, hey, give me a call. All right. And so I'm just networking with everyone, just taking myself just serious as a heart attack, you know? And I was talking with this one executive, and as he started to walk off, I go, oh, wait, hold on a second. And I reach in my coat pocket and I go, give me a call sometime, as I hand him my hotel room key. And he stops and he looks at it and goes, oh, that escalated quickly. And I was like, oh God, I'm so sorry, man. I got so bright red and I was so embarrassed. And rather than finding it funny in the moment, like, I was in such a headspace of just chronic seriousness that I was beating myself up over it. I was like, you idiot. And my brain was processing this moment like I was an actor in a drama, you know, and that I had just ruined my big shot. You idiot. What have you done? And it was no big deal. Like, the guy was super nice and he kept our room clean. I mean, it was great. But like, you know, rather than doing that, you know, if you're doing things like writing these things down that are funny, you're training your brain to see those moments as comedic or funny moments rather than dramatic, horrible, what if moments in your life. And that's why I think I don't want to live my life that way. I don't want to live my life as an actor in a drama just to reach the end to find out I was the director and it could have been a comedy the whole time.
That hits home, dude. That's like, you know, such a great mental analogy. You know, why not live a comedy rather than a drama and or a horror film? Heck, I feel like a
Exactly.
lot of people are in like a horror film, and you know, my wife calls me a delusional optimist. Uh, which, you know, I don't know how to take that, but I'd rather be a delusional optimist than a never-ending pessimist. And I just feel
Right.
like you have a choice. Everyone out there has a choice. How do you see life? It's either positive or negative, typically. Like, it has to skew one way or the other.
Yeah.
Is everything happening to me? Oh my gosh, I'm a victim, versus, hey, no, it's happening for me. And I'm going to take accountability
Exactly.
for my reality, whether it's out of my control or not. You know, they say there's only really three things you can control. I believe there's only two: your attitude and your effort. I don't know what the heck the third one was that they said, maybe your energy. But the point is, there's not much you can actually control in life. And
Right.
your perspective is like your outlook, that attitude that you bring, that's got to be positive if you want to live a happy life and be a happy hustler and exercise the humor habit. Can I get it? Amen.
Amen, brother. I said amen. Yeah,
That's,
I think you're exactly right. You know what's funny too about optimism and pessimism is like pessimists never identify themselves. Like no one ever goes, well, I'm really a pessimist. What do they say? They go, I'm a realist. I'm just keeping it
exactly.
real. I'm
Yeah.
like, nah, dude, you're looking at the shit side of everything.
Yeah.
You never hear anyone go like, well, I just like to be really pessimistic about everything. But there are a lot of folks like that out there. And, I actually think I'll bet you're not a delusional optimist. I, I'll bet you are a rational optimist. And what I look
Thank you.
at with optimism, there is delusional pie in the sky optimism. Like everything will be fine. I don't need to wear a seatbelt. It'll be fine. Whatever. Like if it's
Yeah.
meant to be, it'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's kind of delusional optimism. We know that if you buckle your seatbelt, you're more likely to survive a crash, right? Um, but rational optimism is is feeling whatever feelings you have, going through the heartache or the crappy things that are happening, noticing the good and bad of any situation, and then choosing to take the next best approach toward
Mm.
happiness, satisfaction, the next most optimistic step. To me, or to focus on, I understand all these things are happening. I'm going to focus on what we can do to make it better. Like you can either be a thermometer or a thermostat. And
Mm.
a thermometer, anyone could be a thermometer. That just tells the temperature. It's hot out. This
Mm.
sucks. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough staff. Anyone can do that. But can
Mm.
you be a thermostat and change it by 1 degree for better?
Mm. Dude, I love that analogy too. I'm a visual learner, so you're definitely speaking my language when you paint pictures for me, and that's in pretty like. Uh, just put a frame
I'm
around
the
it.
Bob Ross of storytelling, I guess.
Yes, yes, you're crushing it.
Bob Ross and I have much in common, but not hair.
Yeah, right. I mean, but being a thermostat versus a thermometer it's like you choose what temperature you want to operate at.
Yeah.
That's how I portray it. And I just think most of us, I know Joe Rogan has this like famous viral video of talking about like, are you reading your story or are you writing your story? When I think about,
I
a
love that.
thermostat, like you're the one who's writing it, you're in control. You can choose, hey, if I'm going to go out there and smile and make someone else's day and bring humor and laughter and fun, even if the situation kind of sucks, you
Yeah.
can make the most of it. And that's really what it boils down to, I think. When people do want to kind of go deeper down the humor habit rabbit hole, and I know they're going to want to pick up a copy of the books first and foremost, but what if someone wants to kind of work with you directly too, or like do you have trainings or courses or classes, or what's the best way for people A to get the book and B to potentially kind of work with you directly?
Well, the best way would just be reach out via my website at paulosincup.com. I typically work with groups from small groups, a team of 10 to keynotes for 8,000 people, so it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. I love doing both because the keynotes, I like to motivate and inspire and that kind of stuff. But I think the team development stuff, helping people learn about their own organization, themselves, and how they might be able to leverage levity to make it even better,
Mm,
is pretty important. So people can definitely reach out through my website, and that's the easiest way.
nice. Yeah, I mean, I gotta just give you a little shout out too, because Paul ran a improv exercise. Actually, I think he did a couple, but one specifically around the campfire that everyone was just rolling on the dirt floor because we were, out in the middle of the wilderness, but we were crying, laughing at some of the things that these guys are coming up with, because they weren't comedians, but it doesn't
Right.
matter when you just let your inner child like free. I feel
Yeah.
like magic happens. You spark creativity, you build bonds with those you're like, laughing with. There's just so much benefit. So having someone like you as a facilitator being able to, bring that out, I
Yeah.
think it's necessary, because if you don't have that like facilitator, you're probably not going to just let yourself go, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and there's a vulnerability in that, especially if you're in a leadership position. You
Yeah.
feel like you got to be buttoned up. I got to, I don't want people to, there's a fine line between, being silly versus serious, or, trying to be comical, but still stay incredible. But what you brought up, like the beginning of this podcast, and you asking me like, what's something a lot of people don't know about you? Um, questions like that. I often start a group with a question about what's a guilty pleasure you have that you don't tell a lot of people about, or something weird about you that you love. And things like that help kind of break down that super serious barrier just a little bit. There's
Mm.
a lot out there about you just need to bring your whole authentic self to work. And I'm like, no, thanks. You know, if you've been to an airport, people bring their whole authentic selves to airports, and people are disgusting. So there's some
Yeah.
stuff you can leave at home, right? but uh but there is something to be said for showing some parts of ourselves that only our siblings or friends get to see, that that kind of inner child, and a little bit silly part of you. And there's a great research from the Harvard Business Review, where they had teams that were tasked to solve complex problems, come up with creative solutions to complex problems. And they had one team just get right into problem solving mode. Another team, first, everyone just go around and share your greatest accomplishment, then start getting into problem solving mode. And another team, everyone share an embarrassing moment and then do it. That embarrassing moment group outperformed the other two groups by 25%. 25% more
Mm.
solutions generated and more creative solutions generated. Because there's something magic that happens when we just let that barrier down just a little bit and share a side of ourselves that we don't always share.